Famously in the 70s, there was a horseman, Gordy Ainsleigh, who had, ridden that race multiple times. He'd always made some comments about like, I think I could run this thing, whatever. One year, as this legend goes, his horse came up lame a couple of weeks ahead of the race, and he decided he would do the race anyway on foot. And he finished it in under 24 hours. And I think the next year, maybe a couple of people did it, and then a couple of years later, they did it as a separate race for the first time, and 4 or 5 hardy souls. Now, there are different tales throughout time in the 1800s. We can go down crazy history for people at a different point. Welcome back to another episode of Two Average Runners with me, Hugh, and my co-host, Alice. Alice, how are you doing today?
Hi. Much better than when we last recorded, but you'll hear I've still got my radio voice. It's a little bit croaky, so hopefully listeners
You do have a good radio voice there, exactly.
Can tolerate that, and a bit of coughing.
You were coughing a bit in our sort of pre-show, but sometimes that's like the back end of like, there's like the final bit of like coughing through whatever's there, like coming toward the end of being sick, which I'm hoping for you. I'm hopeful for you.
I'm hopeful, but this thing started with coughing and I'm still coughing, so we'll see. We'll see.
Exactly. You certainly, for those who watch on YouTube, it's like you are looking a lot more sprightly and
and I've got my hat on today.
Fresh. And you've got your hat on. Who's the hat? Give a shout out.
There's a guy called Alex Zono. You'll actually see Carla Molinaro, who you also follow, she's one of his big friends. I think she's done a whole advertising campaign. So my hat says "Running loves you." I just like the color scheme. But
that's great.
He also does all these other ones saying "I dig running."
Yeah,
I wanted the pink one in this. Yeah, so that's Alex Zono. He does quite cool, quite funky outfits. I think most of it's geared to your scene, the trail, ultra, endurance scene, which maybe we chat about later. But because I've not been feeling great, I decided to put my hat on today and bring a running theme to the show. But if it gets a bit hot, I'll take it off.
Game on. Well, good
to see you.
Good to see you too. We got some fun things to talk about today, but let's kick us off, Alice. What are your sort of like ratings for the week? Home and running. How did this past week fare for you?
Home is kind of like a 0.
Yeah.
If you can't cry, you laugh. That's the stage I'm at. But that's fine. We won't dive into it. But home has been rough.
Yeah.
But I got some good time in with my dog this weekend, so that's good. Running, I have not run for, I think I'm on day 7 today, which is basically unheard of.
You. Yeah, crazy.
I haven't even cycled. So that tells you properly sick. And my coach put a run in for me today. But I haven't run because I woke up just coughing so much, and it feels, sometimes at the end of being sick, it's because it's all like from your sinuses and you're clearing that. This still feels like short of breath, wheezy, just going up the stairs, walking my dog. I was like stopping. I need to sit down. So, I'm going to see how I feel after the pod, but I might just start again, see if I can start tomorrow.
Yeah.
So running is also a 0, but I have great news.
Yes.
I'm also going to give it running a 10.
Because
I do not have any stress fractures. I do not have any stress responses. I have no inflammation. There is nothing wrong in my leg.
Great.
On the scans. And I paid through the nose for this MRI, for the most sensitive MRI you can have. There's nothing. So the man...
That's great. Huge.
The doctor, who was great, he phoned me up and it was brilliant. He was one of these ones who just cut straight to the chase. Like, your scan is normal, like no polite chit chat, which was awesome. And he just said, biomechanically, that leg clearly needs a lot of strength and conditioning work done. It's taking a hammering. I think because it's my left leg and because, I've made it clear on the podcast, I like to stick to the rules when I'm running on the track, and I do not go in the opposite direction. And even when I run Regents, and even when I run Battersea, I'm always turning the corner on that side. I do think that's part of it. It's like a hammering on that leg. So I need to think about maybe rotating.
Yeah.
But that leg is just a lot weaker. So what's great about it, Hugh, is that even when I got told that there's no stress fractures, I'm still getting this grumbling discomfort in it when I'm walking the dog. But now I can just go, it's nothing, and ignore it, rather than focus on it and feel like, oh my God, is there a stress fracture? Am I making it worse? Am I living in denial? Am I being a bad runner? Am I being a bad physio patient? Am I just living, am I just pushing through pain? Now I'm like, nope, there's nothing wrong with you. So I feel extremely relieved, and it means I can just push on. That's what his literal words were, you can push on. And I was like, great.
I think that's a 10 for the week. I'll give you a 10 for the week
10.
just for like for our, two average runners, for our average runner listeners out there, being able to, and often when we say we're average, we're actually like the most crazy, committed, obsessive, compulsive runners out there as well, chasing our goals that are meaningful for us. So, we're not elites where this is our job, and we often can treat it like our job. Well, maybe unfortunately, treat it like our job, treat it like, with that kind of like, that sort of maturity. And it's like, it's our thing that's often, we talked about it before, I think a couple of episodes ago, it can become a crutch. It can be our release. It can be all these things. So I think to be able to then at times like take 6 or 7 days off when you are actually sick or injured and actually need to, and actually do that, not just come back too early and then immediately get more sick and prolong the sickness or prolong the injury. I give you a 10 for that one, and coupled with the MRI clear scan, I think it's a 10 squared. I think that's a great week.
Yeah, I'm really
and you
excited.
should celebrate. Side note, I love a podcast. There's a great podcast, and we'll talk a bit more about like trail and ultra later, called the Boulder Boys. And it's these 5 guys in Boulder, Colorado. And they're all, professional. Most of them, I think they're all sponsored trail runners, but most of them have like another job. Quite a few of them work in tech. At least one of them's a coach. Another one is a founder, a startup founder. Like, so they're not like just solely, running each day. But they were just kind of, they were talking, and basically their whole thing is that like their podcast is what they would talk about on a run.
On a run. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And so I was sort of listening to one of their podcasts over the weekend as I was driving the car, and they were referencing another show which celebrates something like, it calls it like Strava File of the Week, right?
Okay.
On this other show. And it's usually some epic run or epic hammered workout. And they were actually saying it's like, this is actually pretty bad to be like, the worst thing you could do would be showcased on Strava File, because it's kind of like you've sort of peaked. You've kind of like, you're sort of showing your cards too early. It's like in training, you want to save that for the race day. And they were kind of saying that they thought that like Strava File of the Week should really be, rest day, or something. It's like, like it's where you did the
like a super easy
run. Yeah. Like an easy, like it's just a really quality recovery run, like nothing fancy, didn't push it, controlled heart rate, whatever. It's like sort of celebrate that thing. So anyway, the Strava File of the Week for Alice was like the no run-in Strava file, taking the rest of the
So that was great. And then we'll chat later, but the guy came up with some stuff I need to work on, strength and conditioning, and also nutrition, because of kind of red S worries. But yeah, we can chat about that later. So yes, I'm delighted, because with my home life being at a 0, I thought, well, obviously now my running will get taken away, and then I'm really going to be tested to see how much of a breakdown I'm going to have. But the fact that my running wasn't taken away, I'm like seeing as a total win. So yeah, delighted. How about you? How's your week been?
How was the week? The family, home, personal, like about a 6, still navigating some things, but like had some quality family moments this past week. Some fun. The weather is quite sunny and summery here. It's a little hot at times, but I went to the park over the weekend, went to the splash pad and the sand pit there, did some sort of like playtime with the kiddo. And so that was really fun. What else? Yeah. Work has been going solid, and like, just like having some quality sessions with my clients, and just sort of like things are just rolling nicely there. And then running, I would probably give it like a 7 or 8. I mean, did my strength work, which was good, got my runs in when I could, and got a really quality long run over the weekend where I did a lot of hills. Actually drove out to Austin to my favorite spot there, where it's like a much longer hill, but it's all roads, but it's in a neighborhood. So there's not cars to worry about. And I could basically so you park at the top, you run down one hill, you could run up the hill the other side, turn around, revert, and come back, and there's a little side thing where it's really steep. We're talking like 20-30% steep, like, you're power hiking this one. And so that, like, it was like a 2.5 mile round trip on that loop. And then, refuel, take a gel, take some fluid, so you can sort of run without carrying schlepping a bunch of stuff. Yeah, actually park at the top. That's where there's the easiest parking. It's quite good as well. It's quite psychological. Like, you finish at the summit when you finish at the end, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, it just kind of worked out well. And so then it's like, it's better than the sort of like 1 mile loops. And like, God, how many of these do I have to do? So
Yeah, killer.
I was 10 miles in and I get to the top. And then there was a guy who just showed up there who I know, one of my running guys. I hadn't really messaged anyone to say I was going to do it. And so I guess he was driving up the hill as he was arriving to get there, saw me. So he went way to the top and said, then we did the next, like, we did probably another like 7 to 8 miles together.
Wow. Awesome.
So it was a big sesh for me, but it was actually like, my real goal was like, I sort of pushed the downhills, really sort of hammered the legs.
You do love a downhill.
I do love a downhill, but remember, I've got some big, my kind of, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but like my sort of, goal of the summer is an adventure in the mountains in Colorado. And it's like, I got to get these legs ready. And like, all the strength can be great for the climbing, but it's really hard to get the legs ready for the descending, get your quads ready. And so you kind of have to, the kind of thing they sort of say is you got to run steeper than you'll do in the race or the event and like faster than you'll do in the race. And you only have to do it 2 or 3 times. It's called, you might remember this, the repeated bout effect. So you do it once and then you might get DOMs. Like I was feeling a bit sore today. I'm curious to see tomorrow, how sore I get. And so you sort of get that delayed onset muscle soreness. But then you do it like, 1 or 2 weeks later and then do it a third time. And by then you're just not getting sore at all. And then you're kind of ready to like, to take it, to really hammer it in the event.
I have a question for you now. Now, we hadn't said we were going to talk about this, but I actually think that I'm very curious to know your take. What are your top tips for running downhill? Now, I get it that if you're on the trail, it's going to be slightly different, but like biomechanically, what do you think people need to think about when they're going down? And then I'll give my thoughts, although I'm no expert. And then I'm curious to hear about the up as well.
Great question.
Because I think that there's so much mixed advice out there. So I'm keen to hear what you think.
Yeah. I mean, I think the main thing with running downhill, I'm someone who likes to run downhill. I'm a bigger guy anyway, taller.
Okay.
And if I have any more talent on trail running, it's probably more on running downhill and being a little, not quite kamikaze about it, but being quite, aggressive. And I would say 2 things. One is that you want to sort of let yourself go, like not be consciously trying to break yourself. You kind of almost want to go with the flow. And often it means quick feet. Quick, light feet. When you get to the trail, it's really about quick feet because that means you can, if a stone moves or whatever, you just on to the next step. It doesn't really matter what any particular step is because you're already on the next step. If you take big lolloping strides and hang, like sort of slow, then, something happens and the moves and you're rolling over and you can end up in a real mess quite quickly. So quick feet is probably the big one. Obviously try to have the weight forward. Then you're not sort of leaning back too much. That's quite obviously psychologically feels weird at times to like be sort of, head first down the hill, so to speak. But yeah, trying to flow. I like to try to think about flowing. And
would it be the same to you on the road?
So I would think I think either of those things, in particular on the trail, it's, definitely the quick feet. But even on the road, I was like getting quick, at times. And it's definitely about sort of like, you got to, up the cadence, keeping it nice and light there on the feet best as you can. And just kind of taking the brakes off is probably the big one. On the road, you have to worry less about the falling. But then again, it's like I almost think you have to, don't try to treat it that different. Cause sometimes on the road, even as pavement, there's like a little divot and there's a little bump and there's a little, something piece of cement that has got fallen off somewhere. It's like, and it's now become part of the road or whatever. And it's sort of like, so I like to, I try not to like just totally switch off because I almost think that if you're doing that, you almost like can throw yourself more if suddenly the slightest divot instead of like, I've done this before. I think I mentioned like I did a trail run and I was fine on the trail run and then we're on this flat piece of pavement coming into the end and I like roll my ankle because I was like spaced out.
Lose concentration.
So that was kind of a good, and we can talk more about ultras later, but a big thing in ultras is the risk of muscle breakdown. And your muscles, your quads can really break down hard running downhill. And that's where at the extreme, people get, rhabdomyolysis, right? It's where like there's muscles breaking down in the blood, the kidneys can't process this or whatever. And so a big part of making ultras safe is you've got to hammer the legs in training, the downhills in training, because that's what allows you to be able to be resilient, that you don't have the breakdown in the race and risk rhabdo. So the Roaches, our good friends David and Megan Roach, they call like the workout I did yesterday, just say no to rhabdo.
Okay, I've heard.
Right, you heard them saying. Okay, so it's like a specific workout where you're like, I am just going to go, and it's almost I'm thinking about hammering the downhills more than I am about pushing the uphills.
Okay, that's my question. Because often when I'm doing hills, I'm thinking about the push on the uphill, and then I'm using the downhill as my recovery. But this is actually specifically about a downhill workout.
Almost, yeah. I mean, it's just, it's definitely much more intention on the downhill than just like, oh, I'm just going to fully relax. Now, of course, my heart rate was coming down the downhill, because even so, I'm still going downhill. But there were times later in the run, it got hot as well, where because I was having quite a lot of intention on the downhill, it didn't drop that much towards the end, between the heat and that one and the focus.
And I'm assuming if your focus in the gym is a lot of enough quad work, which isn't always top of the pops and everybody's S&C for running, but I'm assuming like you really have to be like lots of single leg. Maybe we'll come on to it in a moment, but yeah.
Yeah, we do. And maybe we'll come on to that in a moment. Yeah, but yes, very much so. And I think it's kind of tough to do the eccentric motion. So like when you run downhill, your muscles extending under load as you sort of like, which is almost a break-in as you're running downhill. And it's kind of hard. Like the way to do that in the gym would be like a single leg step up, maybe with weight. And it's the going down slowly. That's the eccentric bit.
Yes, got it. Yeah.
So it's not the like explosive going up. That's actually it's the other bit. And so
which when we chat about this, my physio was calling me out on. I'm not doing that stuff properly, the slow bit. And quickly tell me, okay, so I'm just going to say what I do for downhill is the same, is to avoid the braking thing.
Yeah. Exactly.
So when I'm running a rolling hills route, and I actually quite like a little bit of rolling in a race even, because I actually quite enjoy the letting go bit. I have had some horrible falls running on Table Mountain.
Yeah.
One which required needing sutures and things because I haven't managed the downhill very well.
Yeah.
But the light feet, because when I run with my partner Dale, he's also bigger, tall, and bigger, and he hates the downhill. But I think it's because he's always braking and almost leaning back, whereas I'm like, you just got to go with it. But what's your uphill? What are your takes on uphill, technique-wise?
So again, I think there's two parts to that as I think about it, which is there's the running uphill and then there's the hiking uphill. So for you and for a lot of our listeners who are sort of running sort of road marathons, I mean, you're running everything, right? Obviously, and so it's unlikely to be an uphill so I think with, that you would be looking to sort of go into a hike for mode. I think with that one, I still think that it's like shortening the stride. Particularly in like a marathon, it's like if you just shorten the strides, and try to keep the cadence high. I like to try to lean into the hill. So like keep the weight, the weight forward, keep that momentum. And then, I think it's just like sort of find a sort of a groove that you can sort of keep that going, keep the sort of momentum going there.
And I think if you have a hilly race, you have to kind of put some time in on the hills. That's for sure.
I think you have to in practice. Exactly.
Yeah. Like I'm going to try and do Boston, I think next year, and I'm going to make sure I get enough hills in because I think that's got down and up that can.
Yeah. And that one really does. It is a net downhill race. And so you get a lot of the downhill. So you're going to trash the quads a bit, because you're running fast. And if you're running a little faster on those downhills, they kind of say anyway that you should get your quads ready even for a marathon, because the marathon, the breakdown you get towards the end of the marathon, doing a hard downhill work, session will prep you well for any road marathon, any fast road marathon.
I need to look at that. So would there be a good time now just to chat a bit about strength and conditioning?
I think so.
I had a really cool appointment with my physio last week to kind of look at, I'd obviously done a whole lot of S&C, strength and conditioning, coming back from the stress fractures. And then now we can kind of progress things on a little bit. So I had like quite cool advice and tips from him, but I'm also curious to know like what are your top exercises? What's your kind of approach to it? I know you've got a trainer, but how are you approaching it?
Yeah, it's actually so I think for me, so I have a trainer. And so right now, a big part of that has sort of been improving my strength. So that is less about like the sort of like headline numbers, like, oh, how much are you squatting or deadlifting or bench pressing? We do a lot that's, a lot of single leg movements.
Yeah.
So do a lot of single leg deadlifts. Either that could often be with a really heavy kettlebell or a couple of kettlebells or a dumbbell. I do a lot of single leg movements. So single leg step ups. So often that's weighted as well. And so then often it can be trying to be very slow on the way down because that gets that eccentric. So it's not, but then sometimes it can be trying to be explosive on the way up. But oftentimes as well, it's like there's a whole balance component. So a slightly higher step. And then can you be pushing up, not throwing yourself up, right? Can I be stepping up and controlled, pulling up, and then stepping down versus sort of whole body, so almost like jumping up, sort of like the whole thrusting that actually gets you up there. So I think those are some of the big ones. I mean, even the other day, my trainer, we did a leg press. Right. But often we'll do leg press where we're doing quite heavy, working up to some heavy weight and really focusing on the breathing and staying the core engaged and really engaging the glutes. But we did one where it's much lighter weight and we were just using single leg leg press. So it's really focusing on the single leg strength. That one obviously had no balance because you're sitting in the sort of seat with the leg up and you're pressing it up. But yeah.
How many times a week are you doing strength? How do you fit it in with the running?
Yeah. So right now, because I'm making it a focus, I'm doing 2 sessions a week. And it's usually my Tuesday session is usually the lower body focus. And then my Thursday session tends to be more upper body so if I get pretty sore after Tuesday, I have more time to recover before, often for me, the weekend is the one I want to be fully recovered for, the long run, often with some work.
So you do it earlier in the week.
Yeah. Now it's tricky. I'm not doing a ton of track speed work right now. So that's it's a little trade-off because if I was doing track, more intensity, I'd probably try to do that. That's going to suck if I did that the day after my legs. So I might try to do it in the morning, but then if I really hammer then I'm it's a trade-off. Which one do I want to be quality? Do I want if I'm next time I'm in a marathon phase where I've got, I'm doing some track work, I'll probably do that in the morning. And then I'd go to the gym with my trainer in the afternoon. And then it would be a little bit more maintenance, as in the focus might be hey, or maybe at that point we'll move it to Tuesday, move it to the Thursday. So I've got a couple of days to recover because maybe the long run is less of a focus. I can maybe afford to be a little bit more fatigued for the long run. So that's kind of how I think about it. But I do think, I have a couple of friends I run with a lot. One friend who introduced me to this trainer, she's been working with him for about 6 years now. So she now meets him, goes once a week. Right. And a couple of times, recently I could only make it because of travel once a week. So on that one, we did a mixture of everything, the whole body.
Okay, cool.
How about you? What kind of stuff have you been doing and what are you going to be doing going forward?
I've been trying to always do 2 strength sessions a week. Obviously, when the mileage is getting higher and you're getting close to the race, it does start to become a bit tricky to fit it all in. But my basic principle is I'm going to do legs in the afternoon of the day that I do a session, whether it's track or so probably be Tuesdays and Thursdays. And what I've agreed with my physio is we're going to have Tuesdays are going to be a day where we do a compound exercise both times. So I'm going to do squats on Tuesdays, deadlifts Thursdays. But then after that, it's all single leg. So and he's thrown in some core. He said he did also explain to me that the compound lifts and even some of the single legs do use a lot of core already. So the plan is, and what he's adding in that he hasn't done before is a third time in the week, I'm just hitting carbs.
Because that's an area that you need to work on.
And I think for most runners, you're always reading, and I'm always seeing that the carbs are taking 8 times our body weight through them, or whatever it is. The force is the highest through our calves. So if there's anything that you do, if you run out of time and you just at least get your calves done. So I'm probably going to put that in on a weekend, the day that I've done the big session or whatever it is. So on whatever the hard days are, you do the legs. I haven't got much upper body in. I might throw some bits and pieces in, some basics and push-ups. I used to always do an upper body day, and I'll try and get it in when I can, but I need to prioritize the legs. So the kind of key focus he told me is we need to go heavy. And eccentric, slow eccentric. And plenty of single leg. But he's kind of don't make it so difficult. Like you need the one calf, one glute, well, actually one straight leg calf, one bent leg calf, one glute, one hammy, one quad, one compound. If you've got time, add the core. Like he kind of gave me the priorities of the things that have to go in. And actually, I kind of was hoping he's going to give me all sorts of new, very exciting exercises, but it's super basic. It's like hip thrust for the glute.
Yeah.
There's one hammy exercise he wants me to do, which I've been doing now for a while. I think it is great. You lie on your back and you have a slightly bent leg and your heel is on the bench and then you lift up. So it's kind of like in that nearly extended leg phase, and then single RDLs if I've got time.
Yeah.
Bulgarian split squats, the worst of the worst. Yeah. Romanian deadlifts. Bulgarian split squats, which I absolutely hate. And if I've got time, I'm going to put the extended leg curl in. Essentially, when I did my assessment, I saw how much weaker my left leg is. So I need to and he said basically, you need to be moving that you are going towards failure, especially at the end of the sets. But the plan is, I think we looked at 18 weeks to Chicago. So really hit it hard for the next 6 weeks. So when you get into the Chicago block, when you got those 12 weeks, you're not starting your strength and you're already actually in a good place. So, and then the other thing he's adding in is, which I didn't do much of because of the stress factors, is plyometrics. And again, what I do like about him, I mean, I'd love to have all sorts of fancy, exciting looking exercises, but they're quite basic plyos. But he wants me to do them on the day that I do legs. And then you could also use them.
Give me some examples of some of those for our listeners.
So he said the double leg pogos, just normal pogos. That's where you sort of springing off your toes. It's hard to describe them and I'm not going to do a demonstration. He also had single leg jump forwards and jumping onto a box. He did demonstrate it in a certain way. I can't quite remember, but I think it's about how I land on it. And I don't know if I still have to jump again when I'm up on the box. And then there's an option to do one where you're jumping off the box as well. But I think it was mainly some double pogos, some single ones going forward, and then springing up what it is squatting really low and then really being explosive and jumping onto the box. But I think you come from a really low squat. I think that was it. So very simple, but he said if you can do it consistently. I think the thing that I thought was interesting is that the specialist, because we also spoke a bit about my nutrition intake not matching my output and the risk of red S and all of these things, that the danger is also if you're doing so much in your gym workout that you're not getting the benefit of what you're there to do, which is to strengthen and build muscle.
Yeah.
So it's just becoming something more catabolic and breaking you down. So I think there's something to think about for me specifically that maybe others also want to think about is, are you fueling your strength workouts properly? It's not just like you doing a little bit it's not there to just burn more calories. It's there to actually build you.
Yeah.
And actually, interestingly, I wanted to ask you this. They also suggested I need to think about creatine, which I know is something that actually for women of my age is really highly recommended. I've just always been avoiding it. Are you taking it at the moment?
I am. I mean, I have some, and I try to put it in my. They sort of recommend 5 grams a day or something. I try to do double that. I've heard also some people go even bigger. Often in a load-in phase, they might, do more anyway, they sort of say. But everyone seems to be. So I try to put a scoop or 2 scoops that are 5 gram scoops or whatever when I'm.
Can you just blend it into a shake or something like that?
Yeah, I just put a scoop. It's a very small scoop, obviously. Whenever I make a protein shake, for strength work, I think it is important. I think it's interesting 2 things. I think one is I think recovery is really important, right? Just like we do it for our run-in. And I think it is that mixture. It's the protein, obviously key. It is carbs as well. You do need the carbs to recover.
Yeah.
So I think that's important afterwards. I'm also trying as well to make sure I have something before I go into my strength because I'm often doing my strength at 5 p.m. to sort of the end of the day. So I try to either have if I'm really organized, maybe it's a mid-afternoon smoothie, but at least I'm just maybe grabbing a banana or something.
That's what
I want to just sort of have something because otherwise I can walk into it and actually be kind of flat because I kind of don't have any sort of to fuel. I want to fuel the actual strength workout, and then I want to make sure I get the recovery that it's not. It's
that's what he was saying to me. You've got to get some carbs in before so that you can do it. Actually really push it.
Yeah.
And that you're not just then at risk of, as I say, sort of breaking down rather than building. And the other thing that I was told, I don't know if you use any of the collagens, but actually, it's the US website, The Feed.
Yes.
The guy who runs The Feed, he sends really great emails.
Yeah, Matt at The Feed.
Yes. Yeah,
That's right.
really good. And I've tried a lot of their products, but Pillar, I think, does some good products. But they do a collagen that's been proven to be specifically useful for tendons. And so one thing I've been reading a lot about is that you can add that in before your strength workout. And it's quite tendon specific for helping.
And you do it before?
Yeah. Apparently that's the kind of the way to do it. You can use the collagen either before a strength workout or before a hard running session. So, and apparently it's specifically kind of tendons and soft tissue.
I like it.
So yeah, those are other things that I'm sort of trying out. I haven't been brave enough to start the creatine yet, but I might give it a go. I'm a little bit worried about how it'll make me feel, but everybody has kind of told me you just might hold on to a bit of fluid, but you don't. It's quite quick as you get used to it.
Yeah, I think I've heard like almost unanimous for women, certainly once you sort of get into even 30s, but 30s, 40s, 50s, and like I think I've heard it. I think with guys, some people have good results, some people don't. The irony being, like, I think it's David Roach says he doesn't like creatine. He doesn't like how it makes him feel and whatever. So he's like a no on himself personally. But it's sort of, I think the smart thing for anyone who hasn't tried it and is going to try it. Remember, we're not doctors, we're not nutritionists, we're not giving advice here. But is try it when you're not changing anything else.
Yeah, that's a good point. I need to think about that.
Because and I think so that you could, because I think the question is like, do you retain a bit more fluid? You might in the first few days or a week, but it's like, I think it maybe normalize. But it's sort of like, I think so many of these things, I'll admit it. Look, I tried the Athletic Greens bandwagon,
so did I, at great expense.
Great expense. And you know what? I never noticed anything fucking different, right? I didn't actually feel any better. I didn't feel any worse necessarily. I didn't feel like anything got better.
It was one more thing to bloody drink and shake and carry with you.
Yeah.
That's what I
found.
So
it was one of those, and I didn't actually enjoy the drinking of it. Now, for our listeners here, it's like, I do notice that if I'm quite religious on tracking the protein. I don't want to track all my calories. It's like, invariably I track some stuff because I'm trying to track the protein, but I try to track the protein, or like I have like rules of thumb that if I do 2 protein shakes and they're bigger protein like scoops in them or whatever, one after the morning run, one after in the afternoon, I'm pretty much going to get there if I'm also eating properly as well. Like that's my sort of like that's how I have to, but I kind of have
that's
to.
That's how you know if you're going to make it.
If I'm going to make it, but I know that if I don't, I will end up, I'm training, I will end up sore and feel like, I'm like a freaking robot, like a creaky little, Tin Man from the Wizard of Oz or whatever. Whereas then if I get back on top of my protein, I do sort of feel like I'm like recovering well, even from doing work. But yeah, the Athletic Greens, I couldn't tell any difference. So with the creatine, I would, try it when nothing else is changing. So you can try to be like, okay, do I see what's actually going to
give that a thought?
The one of the exercise I think is really interesting is particularly for people doing trails. And so for, there's a sort of routine that's known as sort of mountain legs, which is basically single leg step ups. And what I try to do with those is to do them after every run that I remember. If I can remember. So you finish the run and
while you're fatigued.
Yeah. So it's also while you're fatigued. So it's at the end of the run, you're fatigued, but it usually takes like 2 minutes because it's like 50 step ups on each leg. Do a 50 in one go. So they should feel quite tired by the end. No weights. And I have a little steps that go up onto up to the front door. So usually 2 steps. So it's just quick.
Okay, nice.
And usually I've got something to hold for balance.
50?
50 on each leg.
Okay, cool.
But it basically to do 50 on each leg, and then maybe I'll do a couple of like 10 or 20 reverse lunges, something, or on each leg, and you're done in 2 to 3 minutes. And I've even done it. I try to do it like after a trail run. You can even do it on the car. So you open your door and you step up to the side of the car. It doesn't have to be and you're sort of hopping up and down essentially with the single. I think that's good because again, you're doing some of the eccentric there as well.
Okay, cool. I like that to add that in.
So it's a nice little one to add in, and try not to we've got to keep things simple as well, right?
So tell me, we've got ultra season coming up.
Yes.
And sometimes when you're talking, I'm just nodding, but sometimes I do know the names of the races. But I thought it might be quite cool to give people a bit of a lowdown on what do you mean when you talk about Western States, golden tickets? Like, what are the big races? What's the kind of trail ultra running 101, especially the US scene for people who are maybe more road focused like me? Like, what do we need to know?
Exactly. So, a lot of our listeners, and they're coming from your background as well, is much more road. What do you have? You have your 5K, your 10K, you got your half marathon, and then this like elusive distance, the marathon, right? And
some road ultras.
And then there's some road ultras, which ironically, you're more familiar than others. There's basically two of them, which are kind of well known, and they're both in South Africa. There's sort of Two Oceans and Comrades. Comrades is probably the most famous road ultra
this coming weekend.
Ooh, it's exciting.
So we can talk about that next week.
And so when we talk ultras, I mean, ultra is any distance over a marathon. So technically a 50 kilometer is the beginning distance of an ultra. That's 31 miles. Typically when people talk about ultras, and they're really talking about on trails, and often then, there are sort of like the different distances there. So like most people would consider like the 50 mile to be like, if you run a 50 miler, that's a true ultra marathon. That's like not just going a bit longer than a marathon. And you probably need to train a little bit more specifically for it. Like you can run a 50K training like you were from a marathon, pretty much, as long as you've done some of the training on trails to get used to what trails are like. But
my hat off.
Nice. And so anyway, I think there, where people are sort of gravitated to, both in its sort of elusiveness, but also it's sort of the standard of like how people like to sort of measure themselves of who is the best, is this 100-mile distance. That's both
so that's 160 kilometers, right?
That's 160, 160 something.
So it's really far.
Yeah, exactly. And that is both this like psychological distance of like, wow, 100 miles. I think the big thing as well is that is usually taking the average person over a day. Right.
Yeah.
And so most of the 100-mile
But what are the kind of winning times for those ones? What can they be?
So then with one of the oldest 100-milers and original 100-milers is called Western States. And I'll give you the little story and then I'll tell you the sort of time. So Western States was originally a horse race. So it was a horse endurance race. So 100 miles on horseback. And it was
assuming it's in the western.
And it was in the west of in California, in the west.
Okay,
and it was from up in, sort of the Tahoe area, Lake Tahoe. And it was going along a trail along the American River. So going in and out the canyons multiple times, up and down, hot, working its way down to a town called Auburn. And it was called like, the Western States. So I think it was called the Tevis Cup or something like that. I think it was called also known as the Western States like endurance ride or something like that. And so people would ride there on their horse and they had 24 hours to complete it. And famously in the 70s, there was a horseman, Gordy Ainsleigh, who had, ridden that race multiple times. And one year, and he'd always made some comments about like, I think I could run this thing, whatever. One year, as this legend goes, and I'm not sure where the accuracy always lands in all this stuff, but it's like, as legend goes, his horse came up lame, a couple of weeks ahead of the race. And he decided he would do the race anyway on foot. And he finished it in under 24 hours, just under 24 hours. And then I think the next year, maybe a couple of people did it, and then a couple of years later, they did it as a separate race for the first time, and 4 or 5 hardy souls, and that was sort of so that's kind of now there are different tales throughout time of in the 1800s pedestrianism, where people like walked around a track for 6 days, and weird history. We can go down crazy history for people at a different point, but that was kind of the genesis of sort of like modern day ultra running, this idea of 100 miles. And so, but for that run, what they end up doing is that for Western States, they started to do it, they gave people 30 hours. And right now, the current course record is sort of 14 hours and sort of 8 minutes.
So what sort of a pace is that? What pace are people running on average?
So for most people, when you think about the 30 hours, that's roughly 18-minute miles.
What's that in kilometers? Should I look it up?
No, I got you right now.
Making you do maths on the move here.
We're doing this on the fly right now. So what did we say?
18.
Okay, yeah. So it's roughly 11 minutes a kilometer.
Well, like kind of if you took 30 hours to finish it.
If you took 30 hours. And so if you just have that, that's 15 hours, right? So like the Leadville course record is 15 and change that David Roach has. So that's like, 5.5, just, between 5.5 and 6 minutes a kilometer. Right. But remember, you're going up and over mountains.
Yeah.
And going up and going down. And with that much time, you stop and,
you need to stop, you need to eat. And
Now the pros at the beginning, those are like Formula One pit stops, right?
Yeah,
where they are literally like 30 seconds in and out. Like someone's changing the gels in the belt, giving them new handhelds or new thing, but, then straight out the door. The average person might be spending like, 5 to 10 minutes at big crew aid stations. I try to always keep mine under 5 minutes, and I allow usually 2 stops in 100 mile for like up to 10 of the main ones where the family is all there.
Do you sit down? Do you sit down?
I try not to sit down. Or
does it then get too difficult to get up?
Most people would sit down a couple of times doing it. I try not to sit down because it's like harder to get back up. Now, sometimes you sit down to change shoes, but they kind of there's a phrase in 100 mile is like, beware the chair.
Okay, got it.
Because, once you sit down and you sort of cool off a little bit and get it back up, which is why the thing which is kind of interesting, people are always like, do you sleep doing 100 miler? And it's like, no, because if you lay down even for 30 minutes, like I think you'd be so stiff that it almost like trying to come back, which is where then those 200 miles are a different event. They're almost like
those are the ones we spoke about the other time
already. That's more like a stage race. It's a multi-day kind of race at that point. So we're sort of saying basically sub 9 minute miles, sub 6 minute kilometers for 100 miles going up over mountains, etc.
Yeah.
And so the sort of the two most competitive, ultramarathons, in the sort of trail ultra scene are Western States, which is coming up at the end of June. And that's, like I say, that's a point to point. So it goes from Tahoe all the way to Auburn through these, it starts up going up a ski resort. And then there'll be a, 20 odd miles, which are often like there'll still be snow melt and post hole in or things like that, depending on how much snow they had that year and how hot the summer's been. And then they get into these canyons where it can be, it'll be over 40 degrees in the Celsius in the canyons, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
So if it's point to point, then your crew have to be at different points along the way.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
Yeah.
And now, actually, is this one that anyone can do, or do you have to get invited? Because have you done this one?
I have not done this one. I have not got into this one. This one is because there's limitations on how many people can go. There's certain sections go through certain forestries or wilderness. There's a limit. So with Western States, it's like 365 people capped each year.
Wow.
And so there's two interesting things that happen. There's the whole set of races that people can get in to Western States. And then for the rest, there's a lottery. So people apply. But like this year, I remember there was probably let's call it maybe 200 spots available for the lottery. And I think there were like 10,000 people applying. Now they do something each year, you don't get in. So then and for all those, you have to run a qualifying race. So you have to run a 100K race, and usually under a certain time, like usually it's under a certain time. And there are lots of races that they can be done for that. So it's and often like if you've done 100 miler, often that 100 mile will qualify. So as long as you finish Leadville under 30 hours, then that qualifies you to get into Western States. But you've got to keep doing one every year in order to do that, to be able to enter. And then each year, I have a friend, I think she's been in the lottery like 8 years in a row now.
Really?
So each year the tickets double. So she might now have might be coming up to now like 256 tickets, or maybe she's at 512 tickets. I don't know exactly how many years she's been in. So each year her odds get better, but more people keep applying. So it's sort of,
It's also a big commitment. You've got to get that qualifier in each time.
But then the interesting thing about Western States is it is known as an elite race. It's like where the people, the best ultra runners around the world go to try to compete. And so they do a cool thing. So if you finish in the top 10, male, top 10 female, the top 10 is invited back the next year. So you'll have some people who will run it year after year, and like just people will be duking it out to make 10th place. Because if you make 10th versus 11th,
you get to go back.
Then you get to go back and you don't have to re-qualify.
And is this what the golden tickets are about as well?
So then the golden tickets is the way outside of that for the elite to get in. So then there are 6 races which have like the top 2 or top 3 get a ticket to get into Western States that year. And so that's where there's the famous race Black Canyon, which we might have talked about in the past. That's usually in February. That's kind of one of the first races of the season. Most of them are 100K, are sort of the qualifying races. And then, but what will happen is that if someone declines the ticket, so the person winner goes, say the winner's already got a place in Western States because they were top 10, the ticket rolls down to the next person.
So
it
is that
can
why
often-
David Roche gave his ticket to the guy that
Yes.
he coaches that was just behind him?
That's right. He did.
Who's
And
been trying for years to
who's
get
been
it,
trying for
apparently.
years. And I think David might have regretted that in hindsight, because
Does he
that
not
guy
have
can't-
a Western States spot?
he's not in this year, and he's been injured anyway. So who knows if he would have
Okay.
been healthy?
So
but
he doesn't have a top 10 at Western States?
no, because he DNF'd. Last year was his first time in there, and he DNF'd at mile 60. So he then got a golden ticket again. So there's a race, Javelina, in the fall,
Yes,
in the
yes,
autumn,
yes.
over Halloween. That is like, that's actually 100 miler. It's the only golden ticket race that's
I
100
saw
miles, but
Carla
it's
Molinaro
pretty
did
flat.
that.
She did.
Yeah.
And
But
so,
she DNF'd that.
and she did DNF
Because
that.
I
She's
think
going
she
back,
also
though. I think
thought she
she's
might get a ticket.
golden ticket. Yeah. And some people, they're
Beth,
like,
Beth
hey,
McKenzie got it, I think. Yeah.
well, actually, Beth McKenzie is a different, that's actually a separate
Another story.
topic. Another
Yes, it
story
is.
for another day. But Beth
Yes, let's
McKenzie
save that
has
for another time.
They'll save that for another day. But yeah, she was not able to take her ticket. But anyway, so the sort of so the golden tickets, that means that those races become quite competitive, because you have like people lining, and some of these pros will like, they'll show up at like, they'll try to race 3 golden ticket races just in order to try to like, they missed it at one and they go to the next race and miss it at that one, keep going. They're sort of golden ticket hunting is the phrase. But it does mean
Isn't
those
it Charlie in the
races,
Chocolate Factory where they were looking for golden
Yeah,
tickets?
the golden ticket,
But
yeah,
that
exactly.
was
It was
involving
like,
eating
the golden
chocolate, which is
ticket.
different. That involved eating chocolate, not running 100 miles or whatever.
Exactly. So anyway, so that's Western States. It'll be pretty exciting. There's like, this year, Jim Walmsley is returning. Now, there's a little weird thing there. There's also the sponsors of the race get entry. You know, like they can give a ticket to someone. So Hoka, which is the premier sponsor, gave a ticket to Jim because he didn't enter any golden ticket races this year.
How
'cause
old
he's
is he
still
now?
Early to mid 30s, I think.
Oh, he's young. Okay.
Still young.
Got it.
But then Killian is late 30s. And obviously he won the race in 2011. You know, that's the first time he was back and came third, and he's back this year. But I think he just announced on social he has a bit of a knee injury, but is still planning to run. So anyway, it's going to be a fun race. It'll be live streamed. It's one of the best live streams out there. So you can sort of track it throughout your day on YouTube. And it's usually
What is the other big race that you were going to mention? There's another big.
Yes. So then the other big one is the biggest one in Europe. Is called UTMB, or Ultra Trail de Mont Blanc.
I know. But they do quite a few distances for that one, don't they?
They do. That one is like the famous, you know,
like a festival almost.
It is a festival. The main event, the UTMB, there's a trail called the Tour de Mont Blanc, which is or Trail de Mont Blanc, which is like basically a roughly 100-mile loop around the Mont Blanc massif, and goes over lots of mountains. Doesn't go up over Mont Blanc itself, obviously, but it tracks around it. It's a whole loop, and so that's the main event. But they have a 100K loop, which is sort of like just over half of the route. They have a 50K loop, which is a smaller section. So most of the races end in the UTMB starts in Chamonix and obviously ends there. The other races all end in Chamonix, but they might start in Courmayeur.
And so you telling me that a lot of the US scene, they come over for that one, and
they do, because
I wasn't sure if it's two different scenes.
There's the Western States is the Super Bowl, like the American is main the American. The UTMB is probably the World Cup or the World Champs, and the reason being is like UTMB might have I think it might be 2,000 or 3,000 people on the start line. So even UTMB has a lottery itself, and UTMB has its own races. It's almost like a pyramid scheme now, Alice. So UTMB
the only way Cape Town's got UTCT.
Yes, that's right.
I'm sure that's part of UTMB's.
It might be. I don't know if it is, because UTMB then went and bought all these races. And so now you have to run a UTMB race in order to enter in the lottery for UTMB. So anyway, but whatever. It's all, the point being is like for elites, if you're an elite and you still have to maybe show you're a particular level, but elites can get into UTMB. And so in general, it's a deeper field from a numbers perspective. Western States has a higher quality because the golden ticket races are so competitive that then those people, so you have you might have 10, 15 people on the male and female sign from these golden, or maybe 20 people from these golden ticket races. And so they're the best of the best because it was already super competitive to get those tickets. And then it's them plus the 10 from last year. There's it's a competitive start line, but UTMB will often have 100 deep, not 30 deep. Right.
Okay, got
And
it.
and
Really
again,
interesting.
the Americans do go over to Europe for it. It's the main race that US athletes would travel to, because that's where the sponsors, like, they all get rewarded very heavily if they win UTMB or win Western States. And again,
Well,
UTMB
thank you for
probably
that.
has the best live stream. So it'll be the end of August.
Okay.
And they'll have like people on bikes, they'll have drones. So you get to see them go over these amazing. This amazing mountain. So anyway, that's a little primer
No,
on
well,
the
that's
sort
good because it's sometimes, people don't know all these races, but now it gives, great stories behind it as well. So I'm quite keen to go look some of it up.
But then the last thing I'll say,
get
the last
stuck
thing
in.
about Western States. So Western States will start at 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning at the end of June. And they'll show that there's a big climb. They run up to the top of a ski slope. That's from the start, go straight uphill. And that probably takes them like 45 minutes to an hour and so, and because it's early on, they haven't got out into the wilderness yet. They have drones, they have people on running, like with the cameras, follow cams. So you get, and the commentators, you can sort of capture it all. So then in 14 to 15 hours, the winners will come in just before sunset. And it finishes on a track, Alice. So you're like this. So they go onto the track and run 300 meters on a track, right, to the finish line. So you'll see people finishing so it'll be like whatever that is, like 9, 10 p.m. that night. But then the most popular part of the live stream and the biggest support is what's called the golden hour, the last hour. So hour 29 till the 30-hour cutoff. And that's where you have all these people who've been out there for 30 hours, and they all have a story, of like the thing that they're overcoming. And so I always tune in on that Sunday morning to watch, and everyone's got tears. The commentators are crying, and they're, everyone's crying because it's like it is one of those heartfelt moments of just like.
So I need to get into the gold. When is it? End of June.
End of June. Yeah, I have to check the exact
so
day. It's usually the last Saturday in. I think it's the last.
So remind us that our listeners can also tune in. It sounds great.
Cool. All right, that's enough for that today.
So in the little bit of time we've got left, I think there was an email from a listener.
Yes.
Do we have time to reflect on that?
I think we have a time to briefly cover that.
Go for it.
Cool. Well, so I think what was interesting, the listener shared a bunch about some more about their journey and what they'd, been going. And it was sort of, I think, inspired by some of your like talking about London and your journey and why some of your marathons hadn't gone so well. And I think some of the questions being raised was like, do we put too much pressure on the marathon distance? Is there too much like either expectation, hype? Was it hype?
Yeah.
Hype.
It's almost like
stress,
hype. It's almost
anxiety.
Like, because it's almost like everybody always talks about respect the distance. So there's this whole fear because mostly in training, you don't go over 30, 32 Ks.
Yes.
And then, one of my dad's best friends who's unfortunately no longer with us, but he used to say to me, at 32 kilometers, what happens is that they strap this grand piano to your back and then you must run the rest of the marathon with this piano, or the bear climbs on your back, or whatever it is. So there's this kind of like, oh my God, am I going to make it? Because I don't know what's going to happen, this magical, mysterious thing at 32 Ks. Here you are busy talking about, 100 miles, but there's something around the marathon that maybe is creating more anxiety, I think our listener was saying.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was picking up. I don't know what your thoughts were when you read it.
Yeah, no, that was the set. And it is interesting about the both pros and cons of that. And I think I think what was interesting to me was this respect the distance. Sometimes if you don't know what you don't know can be a good thing.
Yeah.
It could also be a bad thing. I mean, the reason that wall is a real thing because it's when most people their glycogen runs out. It is a literal thing when that grand piano gets strapped on. But I think it's an interesting one about like the pressure we sometimes put on ourselves to run a race and then have a bunch of expectations. So what do you think about that? Like, you have really gravitated to this marathon distance. And with goals and, times and wanting to like see yourself improve and setting ambitious, targets to get to over time. So how do you sort of,
I think, look, the first time I ran a marathon, because I didn't really have a time goal, I was just going more on how do I feel? I kind of had a rough idea. I said, okay, maybe I'll slow down a little bit because I don't know what's going to happen. And then actually, no, I think I'm fine. I can pick it up. And kind of like whatever I did, I was going to be happy with under 3 hours 30. Then I was going to be happy under 3 hours 20.
Mm-hmm.
And then I landed up going under 3:15. And it was like not that bad because I think there was almost no expectation. I didn't know what was going to happen. And I was pretty knackered at the end, but it was by far the easiest race I've ever run. in comparison to any of these others. So I do think from then on in, I was like, well, if that was that easy, I just need to run a bit faster. And I think the time pressure is part of it. So if I'm actually racing, how hard is too hard in the first half? How easy, like where's the balance between this is, I'm not experienced enough to know yet if I'm really a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10, or am I just going too hard? So I've obviously tried to practice. So I think that for me, a big part of it is the time pressure, because I think like our listener, similar sort of ages, you're also not getting younger. So there's almost this pressure, like, I don't know how many marathons I'm going to do, and I want one of them to be like everything clicks into place. But it's almost like the more pressure that you're under, there is that sort of stress with it.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. So I think part of it's the race pressure. I mean, part of it's the time pressure. Part of if this means a huge amount to you, there's that pressure. So I've got that going on because for me, because of everything that's going on in the rest of my life, running's become the thing that I really feel like I'm holding on to. So if I can't perform, there's too much emphasis on it for me. I think we've discussed that before, but I think that's a big part of this for me.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking, is this my last chance to really do a good time and feel good about all the hard work I put in?
It's so interesting. I mean, I think we've shared a bit, I have a couple of experiences. I've had an experience where a couple of experiences with running like 100-miler even, where I've like set a time goal related to it, and the pressure that has put on of then feeling that I'm not then it's getting away from me. And then my two best 100-mile performances, in 2016 and then in 2022. 2016 was in Run Rabbit Run 100 in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And then 2022 when I did the Beacons Way 100 back in Wales. And in both times, my goal was to run with like joy and appreciation, and to in particular, I had people coming to support me, family. I wanted them to be proud of me, not like, wow, he's running really fast, but he's an asshole. He's like, like that was my particularly Run Rabbit Run. I was like, I just wanted people to be like, my parents came out to Colorado. It's the one race that they've traveled to see me.
That's a big trick.
And I was like, I just wanted them to be proud and to smile and to take that moment. I didn't sit down in the chair, to be clear, during that race when I saw them, but it was like smiles and hugs and like the couple of even if it's just a couple of minutes to sort of chat, not like pit stop, give me this, give me that, see you later, I gotta go, and the irony with both those races, I had fabulous races because I had no expectations. Like the one in Steamboat in particular, I had a 36-hour cutoff, and I said beforehand I'd prefer to be 35 hours and 59 minutes, just under the cutoff, with a smile on my face and people being like, "Wow, Hugh really sort of like ran with, with character and courage and a smile on his face." Than like, "Wow, to break 30 hours and get a bigger buckle." And then be like, wow, well, it's impressive, but he was a bit of a dick,
Yeah.
And the irony being is that 70 miles into the race, I picked up a pacer, and it was like, I was just, things had I had not been chasing or tracking really anything, but I was feeling good and strong. And he was like, I think we can get into 30 hours here. And it's like, what do you want to do? It's like, let's just keep moving with great purpose, And I ended up finishing in, 29 and a half hours. But, it's sort of the race came to me, and I found it hard to recreate that. So I really appreciate this listener's question.
Yeah. And actually,
I think, go ahead.
Sorry, Carla Molinaro, who I keep mentioning, she was asked this week, I saw on Instagram, does she have a time goal for comrades? And she said no, she actually doesn't look at her watch ever when she's running.
Wow.
She just runs. She's obviously very experienced. She kind of probably knows what pace she's on for. But she just goes on. She sees how it goes. That's also such a long race. You got 90 kilometers, you kind of need to see what happens on the day, so I thought that was really interesting for somebody that's their living.
Yeah. And it sort of segues nicely. I mean, I often like when I just run in ultras where I've done it where I've tracked, I got expected splits for a section. I've mapped out the whole course, of course. And it invariably does lead to like, a lot of undue stress. I like to just have on my watch just my heart rate, maybe heart rate and average heart rate, so to speak. So it's just like, as the sort of like, am I staying in enough control? Particularly going uphill, like I don't want it to go through the roof.
Yeah.
And then particularly it's like early on, I don't want it to get like to push too hard early on. You want to like really sort of hold back a fair amount. But it's interesting. I don't have a race on my calendar, Alice, right now. I don't have a race signed up for. But I am going out, which I'm super excited about, in July to Colorado. I think we've talked about this, to do Soft Rock, which is the hard rock course over 3 days with a friend. And what's neat is that even if you know like what hard rock the timing might be, you know, sort of, it's like, it doesn't really, I have like no concept of what this would be over 3 days. And I'm just excited to like, the beautiful thing about doing it like this is that we get to, you know, wake up early each day and do the whole course during the daytime. Like when you do one of these 100-mile races, you're often running through the night. You don't see anything in the dark, right? So I'm excited to be able to hopefully see the beauty of these mountains,
great.
And then running with one other person. Yeah, and running with a friend, and there might be a couple other friends who might be out there at the same time who might join us on one of the days. But what's cool is that we'll have a deal, because there's no one else going to be out there. This isn't a race. There's no GPS. It's us in the mountains, and we're going point to point, you know, and then staying somewhere. Like we're staying, you know, and then camping one night.
Do your bags get carried from place to place?
So I think we're starting in Silverton. The first night we'll be able to stay at the place where he's staying that summer, because that's the end of day one. And then after day 2, we're going to have cache some camping gear so that we can sort of like camp that night, and then we'll be back home. But it's like amazing. The goal then is I know there's going to be both of us, and he's a strong runner and he's generally quite fit, and he finished Leadville last year, so he's like he's done the work. He lives in Denver, so he's somewhat acclimated, but not. He's going out there for the month with his family, so he should have. But he has got a busy job, entrepreneur, and so he has not been putting in, has not got in the volume of training. So it's, in a way, it's good that they're on it's not a race and race expectations. But I also know from these things, this is kind of like, you know, we're going to be buddies. It's going to be no man left behind. So I know there may be moments on one of those days where I'm having a rough time and we're going slower, and he's going to go at my pace. You have to go to each other's
paces. Yeah.
And then there's going to be times when he's having a rough time, and even if I feel fabulous, it's going to be like time to get him through this section.
Interesting.
So it's like, what's nice to that listener's question, like, I'm excited. I think you even said, it's like, what are the goals of, I mean, like, what are, you know, do you have any goals or objectives of this adventure? And it is literally like, well, to smile, enjoy, to get home safe, right? Obviously, like, but it's like, it's to collect pictures. That's the thing. It's like, this is a day that we're going to hopefully see some amazing scenery. It's like taking pictures is probably going to be like that's going to be the sign of success here. Not like, did they finish day 1 in 10 hours versus 12 hours? It's irrelevant. You know, it's going to be each day. I'm looking forward to
seeing all your pictures. It's going to be great.
Exactly. Maybe we'll put some on. I think we have an Instagram. I think we have a 2 average one on Instagram. I don't think
so. We need to.
But I think we do, because we put it in the show. We have an Instagram handle in the show notes. Yes, we do. But I'm not sure how much we actually like post to it. But
posting.
But this would be,
get some pictures up.
But this would be a good reason that we would, you know, from both our races and our adventures and our big training days or training things.
Cool.
Well, you know, we can take some pictures and then put them on our Instagram there. Cool.
Thanks, Hugh. That was great.
I think we covered a lot today, Alice.
We did. And next week, we've got some family members' races to catch up on. We've got comrades to catch up on. Hopefully, I'm no longer dying of whatever the hell this is, and I'm back training. And I hope you have a really good week running.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, listeners, if you have any questions, keep sending them in. Keep sending in. You're like, it doesn't have to be a question. Send us in there, and then we'll and again, share an episode. If you like this episode, share it with a friend, someone who'll enjoy listening to it. All right.
Thanks, Hugh. Good to see you.
Thanks, Alice.
Bye.
Good to see you. Bye.